All right, so thus far in the step-by-step process, we talked about positioning, we talked about hook and story. Now we're going to talk about the brain dump, and then we'll go into the outline creation and marketing plan. So when I say brain dump, here's what I mean. This is the process. First, we ask an exhaustive list of questions, then we capture the answers. Secondly, we prioritize those answers into buckets and bonuses. And then lastly, we put related concepts into the appropriate buckets. Now, you can brain dump independent. That sounded kind of weird, but whatever, right? You can brain dump independent of going to the publisher, or you can be the publisher and help the publishee brain dump. Or you can be the publishee and go to the publisher and explain to them this process of, listen, I want you to ask me any and everything possible that you can think of related to this. And then I will prioritize those and put those in the buckets, etc., etc. So what types of exhaustive list of questions can you ask to capture these amazing answers anyway, which you will then put into your product? Well, this is exactly how we do this. So here are some questions. And you can utilize the additional questions from the interview model. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with you interviewing yourself or writing these questions and then having somebody else ask you if you're the expert. Now, if you're interviewing somebody else and you want to publish them, or by the way, you're interviewing somebody else to create the content for them, and publish with them by assisting them to get the content created and being one of the ones that, put your name on it. And then these are the questions you can ask. Tell me everything you know about blank, no matter how big or small. So it's funny because the source material, the person who knows the subject matter, they don't necessarily think about priority. And in fact, it's the opposite. Somebody who's a true master at something is thinking very microscopically on certain things, very nuanced, on very narrow focus, because the rest is unconsciously competent to them. So they don't have to think about big stuff. They think about small stuff, because that's where they make their advantages. Now, you take a person like that, and you tell them to explain something to the average person, and you can see the disconnect between somebody struggling with a problem that's simplistic and an expert who solved that so many years ago they forgot how they solved it, right? So the first thing I like to do, or one of the first things I like to do when interviewing somebody or getting source material from someone that is going to go into a product, either me or them, creating the product, the question is, tell me everything you know about blank, no matter how big or small. That gives them permission to ramble. That gives them permission to go down all kinds of tangents and side notes and things that they might not find relevant. And you have to then, when they're talking, write follow-up questions or considerations. You have to do this with yourself, too. There should be a period of time during the creative process where nobody is censored by what they think should or shouldn't be included in the final product. Prioritization of information can come later. First, let's pull out that information, as much of it as we humanly can, in a fixed finite period of time. So tell me everything you know about blank, no matter how big or small, can do that, and then follow up. Anytime somebody wants to go down a side tangent, encourage them. If somebody wants to ramble on or get really nerdy and geeky into something, encourage them. Encourage yourself. But then we will go through another layer on where we refine that and we eliminate a lot of stuff. Okay? So that's a good question. Here's another good question. What's something about blank that nobody talks about but that is powerful? So it's an interesting way to suss out information. Because again, remember positioning we were talking about earlier, being new is better than being better? Stuff like that. This is one of the ways that we get that out of them. And then again, with follow-up questions. This is one of the ways we get other people to get this out of us. Here's another question. What do you think are the most important things you discovered about blank? Now, blank can be the overall topic, or blank can be about a minor facet within the product itself. Here's another one. What does every other training you've seen on the subject lack? It's a very powerful question because it helps you with your positioning. And it helps you ultimately, at the end of the day, create something that's going to be good for the customer, right? What does every other training you've seen on the subject lack? And then you can ask them the follow-up question. So you could go back and then ask them, once you do this one, you can ask them, why do I keep doing that? You can ask them this. We say, what does every other training lack? And they say, well, it lacks blank. They say, well, what do you think is the most important things then related to blank? Since it's being lacked everywhere else, what's important about it? Then you can say, why does nobody talk about it if it's so powerful? And get further insights that way. Here's another question. What are some tricks anybody can immediately do even if they are a complete beginner? So again, this helps the subject matter expert relate to somebody who's struggling with the beginning of trying to solve the problem. What makes blank so special for solving the customer's problem that they can't get anywhere else? One of my very favorite questions. I ask this all the time. I've asked this to celebrities. I've asked this to authors who've sold 15 million books. I have no qualms. Somebody says, "Hey, Jason, I had a really great conversation with a gentleman. You would know them by name. They're that famous." And I didn't know who the person was at the time. Because I didn't know who, like some people are famous by name, but you don't know what they look like, right? So that gentleman's referred to me, meets me at a live event and says, "Hey, I heard you were the guy, I want to launch this new book next year and then build a community about it. It's about this topic." And it was a topic I had heard a lot before. A lot of experts had weighed in on the subject. Most of them I was not very impressed with. So I asked him point blank, I said, "Well, what makes you so special that you can help somebody in a way nobody else has helped them before?" And this gentleman did not get offended, by the way. He said, "That's a great question." And then the answer he gave me showed me this guy is somebody very powerful to work with. They get it. And so that's a very good question to have, because, by the way, you don't have an answer for that, you're done. Why create? What makes blank so special for solving this problem that they can't get anywhere else? Or what would needed? What would be needed to make this so special? Or what would be needed to make this even better than it already is? That's another good question. It's not on these slides here, but it's one. How can you take the best thing related about blank and make it even better? So the joke was, I was going to ask Tony Robbins this one time. I was at a live event, and Tony was taking Q&A. And I wanted to go up to him, but I didn't know if it would be appropriate for the guy running the event, so I didn't want to make him look bad or get him in trouble. But I was going to ask Tony, "Tony, what do I need to do to be even better than you are at everything in life?" Questions are powerful. So think about different ways that you can get the insight into what would it take for it to be the most best thing in the world, the best thing in the world, or the most special thing in the world, so on and so forth, right? What's the newest thing gaining steam that you think would be helpful to turn people onto? So this is one of those things that can help point you to those trends and help augment those positions and help you know what hooks and things to lead into is and what people to publish or to be published by. What is the most exciting stuff you do related to blank? This is where you get that emotion. This is the strengths. This is the powers that if they're excited about it and we can transfer that, or if you're excited about that, heck, if that's what we give the value to the customers, we make them excited as well, that's awesome. Because this is valuable stuff then to them. What is so good that we should make a separate bonus for it? So this is specifically a question related to a publishee or a publisher even, I guess you could say. What is so good that we should make a separate bonus for it? That it's not enough to include it in a bigger part of the course. We should also break it off and make it its own thing. So what would that be? Or what would those things be? What would they look like? What should we have in them? What should we focus on? These are very powerful questions that you can either have somebody ask you, or you can ask somebody, or you can ask each other to get the source material that you will mold and shape through the outline I've given you. The outline's always the same. Process, why, what, how. But working with a publisher-publishee relationship, these are some very specific questions you can utilize to your advantage.